It was a great sense of community in Athens, Georgia at that time. Now, my dad wasn't a Southerner. He was from Brooklyn, New York, raised in the Depression. He grew up hard. He taught us how to be frugal. Waste not, want not. That was what Al Kingston told everybody. And, you know, when you left the room, you turned off the light. When you brushed your teeth, that water was not running. And when you sat down at the dinner table, you ate everything, including those green peas, which I hated. So did my sister Jean. But when I was 12 years old, my dad put me on a clothing allowance, $3.25 a week. Now, I'm telling you, back in the 1960s, you couldn't buy clothes for that price then. What he was telling us, you're 12 years old, it's time for you to start earning your keep a little bit more and start doing jobs. I used to shine his shoes for 25 cents, and I do oddball jobs around the house. I sold football programs and basketball programs at the University of Georgia. Programs, basketball were 25 cents. You made a nickel on each one. The real money, though, was in football, because those programs went for $1 a piece, 10 cents commission. And I learned that if I got my stack of programs on Friday night before the Saturday game, I could start going door to door and asking people if they wanted a program. And only about 1 in 10 houses bought one, but I'm telling you, that's where the real money was. But I learned that kind of thing. I used to go to Loganville to get my clothes. Y'all know where Loganville is? You remember that men's quality store up there? Some of you, I got some witnesses in the back. It's a good thing. But you know, those clothes were pretty cheap, and you know, I worked in all kinds of oddball jobs growing up, and you know, that was the lesson that Dad taught us, that you had to work hard. When I was in college, I worked through college. I was a resident assistant. I delivered submarine sandwiches. In high school, I'd worked at the IHOP, so I knew the restaurant business really well. And those were the jobs. When I got out of school, I went down to Savannah to visit this girl down there that I had met. Stayed with her family for a weekend, and then ended up staying there the summer. And I had moved to Savannah, and 34 years and 4 children later, I still know that girl. She's my wife, Libby. And some of y'all may have met her at Republican events during the time. But my first job after school was the shipping business. Learned all about the port, and that's one issue that I've been very involved in, is the deepening of the Savannah River, because it's got a $1 invested and a $5.50 return for it. And it is a proper use of the federal government. When James Oglethorpe sailed up the Savannah River in 1733, the water was 12 feet deep. Today it's 42 feet deep. If we want to continue to compete in the international marketplace, we've got to get it to 47 feet. We've studied that project now for 13 years, $41 million. It is unbelievable how inefficient and how ineffective our bureaucracy is on something like that. During that time period, China has built a port from start to finish that's bigger than the port of Savannah. And that should keep us all awake at night, realizing how we're losing our international edge in the marketplace. I sold insurance on commission. I left the shipping business and sold insurance, worked with lots of small businesses, and I learned that small businesses don't want the federal government to be their partner. Businesses do best when they have the least amount of governmental interference. And I'm very proud that after 21 years in Congress, I have a 100% approval rating with the National Federation of Independent Businesses, and a lifetime voting record with the Chamber of Commerce of 85%, because I believe in jobs through the private sector. Also learned from my dad, there's nothing wrong with hard work. I was very happy to co-sponsor the amendment that said if you receive food stamps and you're able-bodied, you ought to be required to work. Because it worries me today in America, we have lost our work ethic. Ask y'all a question. How many of you started working when you were 12, 15 years old? Raise your hand. All right. Now, how many of you learned lessons when you were 12, 15 years old in those jobs which you still apply each and every day? you know, if you ask a group of folks, you know, kind of our age, that question, that hand showing is going to be pretty normal. So why do we think it's okay for kids to have the free lunch and not get anything for it? I mean, what you're doing, you're not helping them. You're saying, look, we want to give you something for free, and there's a stigma about it. You know, let the kids have a work ethic, because that's what makes our country great and our country strong. Switching over to mom a minute, I clearly had a mother who was in the top 1% of all mothers of all time. How many of y'all had one like that? I'm telling you, my mother was loving and she was idealistic. She was everything a good mama should be. She taught me that ideas were more powerful than parties. We were Republicans in Athens, Georgia in the 1960s. Now, Dick, you were talking about your experiences coming here. I'm a witness, brother. Try being a Republican in 1964, riding around on a bicycle that says Barry Goldwater in Athens, Georgia.
I was at Athens and I voted for Barry Goldwater, living in Joe Brown Hall.
Well, I know where Joe Brown Hall is.
I was there with you.
Yes, sir. And you know, it was lonely times.
Wasn't any fun.
It was very lonely times. But you know, my mother felt like, you know, it's okay to be a Republican if people are going to laugh at you, humiliate you. And I served in the state legislature. I was in the legislature. There were 26 Republicans at that time, and Tom Murphy ruled the roost. And he looked at me for the first time we met, and I thought I was a fire hydrant, and he was a dog for a minute. I just thought this is not going to be any fun. But I learned from people like Paul Coverdale that ideas are still very, very important, and I learned to fight. When I ran for the state legislature, everybody tell me, you know, run as a Democrat, because you can believe whatever you want to do, but you know, you just got to tell people that you're a Democrat to get elected. Well, you know, I didn't want to do it that way. It's not the way I was raised, and so I was the first Republican elected to our area in Savannah, and then I ran for Congress, and it was the same thing. Nobody could ever win that seat running for Congress, and the only congressman we had at the time from Georgia was Newt Gingrich. Only Republican. We had Pat Swindle, but he lost, and so we only had one. And I ran as a Republican and went into the rural districts where they were blue dog Democrats, and I was told, look, you might do okay on the islands, the coastal areas, but you're not going to get that rural farm vote because they're all Democrat. Well, I found out they actually were conservative. And I learned that being conservative is really more important than anything else, because again, that's an idea. So in Congress, I have not shied away from the tough stuff, and I've not shied away from voting my conscience. It's real easy, I got to tell you, as a Republican, to vote against Obama's stimulus program. It's easy to vote against Obamacare. I mean, we're all Republicans, everybody's denouncing it. That's not a tough vote. Try voting against the George Bush stimulus program. George Bush had a stimulus program that we Republicans sometimes conveniently forget. $168 billion in May of 2008. I voted no on that. Only a handful of Republicans did. 2 months later, we had the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac bailout. This is about $190 billion. I voted no on that. And then come November of 2008, the biggest of them all, the TARP bailout, the Wall Street bailout. And I voted no on that. I'm telling you, the first time we voted no, the stock market fell 400 points that day. That was a dark and dreary feeling. We actually had a conference call with Vice President Cheney, George Bush, and Hank Paulson. They said, we are on the brink of the Great Depression. We have got to do something about this. And there was a lot of pressure. Dick Cheney called me personally. And I'm an old-fashioned guy. I bet you feel the same way that I do about this. If the President of the United States calls you to do something, to ask you as an American citizen to do something, then it's almost in our DNA to say, yes, sir, that's it. But here I was getting this call from the Vice President. I said, Mr. Vice President, I respect you. I respect the President. And you put me in an awkward position of having to say no to the President of the United States, but I can't vote for that bailout. And I'm saying that because I think it's real important for us as Republicans to keep focused on what we're doing. As somebody running for office, I say there's really two issues out there. First one is national defense. I have had the honor of representing 5 out of our 8 military installations. I visit our soldiers in all kinds of countries overseas. They are some of the best and the finest people that the world has ever seen. And I don't want any of them to fight a fair fight. I want our soldiers, sailors and airmen to go in there with the strongest tanks, the fastest airplanes, most accurate missiles. I want them to beat the heck out of any enemy, anytime, any place. And I want the world to know that if you touch an American citizen, we're going to come after him, and then we're going to come after you. And if the UN has something to say about it, we'll talk to them when we get home. I feel very strongly about that. I also think we ought to put our resources in spying on the bad guys. I don't want the NSA to know who I'm calling, when I'm calling, and keep some data bank about it in Utah. It's none of their doggone business. Now, if they got something on me, and I'm a suspect, then go ahead and go to a judge and go ahead and say, we think Kingston's been talking to a lot of people in the Middle East who are suspected terrorists. We need to tap his phone. Then that's where we need to put the resource. But just for me to call my wife and say, honey, can I get something on the way home from the office? I don't think we need to be doing that. But I feel very strongly that national security, as Republicans, has to be our #1 issue. Secondly, I think we have got to be the party of jobs. And what's killing us right now, as I talk to small businesses, is of course the regulatory overreach. We hear it over and over again. And the latest overreach, of course, is Obamacare. And I think Obamacare is a worthy debate. It's 1/6 of the economy. Of course we're going to debate it. And what was it supposed to do? Bring down the cost of health care and increase the access to health care. Has it done that?
No.
My daughter is a healthy young woman, 30 years old. Her premium went from $160 a month to $270 a month. And that's pretty much on par, because the average person who's 27 years old in the state of Georgia will have a 70% increase. The average person who is 50 years old will have a 21% increase. These are actuarial facts. And a family of 4 will have about a 21% increase. So I saw a letter the other day of a family of 4 who, after subsidies, still had a 24% increase. We all know of a really big company here in the state of Georgia, happened to be in the airline business, $100 million premium increase. $100 million. Now every time you buy a plane ticket, you're going to be paying the difference. Now let's talk about the accessibility of it. We know of a company in Georgia who has said they're no longer going to cover the spouses of 15,000 employees. And another major Fortune 500 company in the state of Georgia that said they're no longer going to cover 20,000 part-time employees. But even to reduce it to a small one, I talked to a company yesterday in Atlanta who have 1,000 employees. 1,000 employees. They're in the parking business. They do all these parking decks you see all over Atlanta. Out of 1,000 employees, they took 900 of them and put them on a part-time basis. We are becoming a part-time nation. I talked to a business in Cobb County, and they said they got to 42 people and stopped. No more, because at 42, they didn't want to get anywhere close to 50, because then they come under a new threshold of a whole bunch of laws. So I think Obamacare has been a failure, and it absolutely is going to hurt job creation in America. But there's another one that's less known, because we know Obamacare right now is 20,000 pages of regulations. It's over 7 feet tall. I still don't think Nancy Pelosi has read it as eager as she was willing to. But there's another one, Dodd-Frank. Now Dodd-Frank, you think, well, that's to keep those Wall Street guys in line. I'll tell you one thing about big business. Big business is happy with government regulations because big business can comply with it. The ones who can't comply are the smaller moms and pops. And so they go out of business, and the market share of the big banks since the bailout has increased, not decreased. We have to remember that. But Dodd-Frank has been hardest on community banks, and their hands are tied. They can't loan money the way they used to. And you know what think about a community bank in a minute? They know you. They put an advertisement in your football program. They underwrite your backpack program. They do other good things locally, and they know who you are. They know what your business situation is, and maybe you don't look that good on paper, but they know you. They know your character, and so they can lend you money, but no longer. It's tied up. We have to stop the regulatory overreach and the regulatory uncertainty in America if we're going to create jobs. And I think that that's what we have to say over and over again to people. Having had a business background, I feel very strongly again, businesses do best without government trying to micromanage their day-to-day decisions. So those are some of the things that I've been working on.